For so many of us, life feels like a script that someone else wrote. Go to school, get a job, get married, have kids, somehow make it all work. But what happens when you wake up one day and realize that that script was written for someone else? Today's guest spent a lot of years following the right quote unquote path, college, marriage, parenting, only to realize that the life she was building wasn't one that supported her. And after a late ADHD diagnosis, years of people pleasing, and finally hitting the breaking point, she's now rebuilding from the ground up on her terms and finally experiencing the freedom that comes from choosing yourself. My name's Aaron.
I'm Cass.
And this is Fuck the Plan. Please join us in welcoming our guest to the show. Please introduce yourself.
My name is Hillary. Newly renamed my maiden name, Hillary Funk. I am 41, medicated and caffeinated, and I am just really excited to be here and talk about my experience being newly diagnosed and newly medicated within the last 2 years. It's changed my life, and I went from a place of feeling ashamed of the need for medicine to now really being proud to shout it out and celebrate it and make it something that improves life for everybody.
That's awesome. And, you know, we say a lot of times that we don't necessarily think that medication is for everyone because it's not. Everybody's brain is
right.
different. But I do think you owe it to yourself to know what you're missing out on. So I tell people all the time, the first time I took ADHD medication as an adult, I was like, what the fuck? You tell me life has been like this for everybody else like this whole time? Are you kidding me? You know, and for me, it was an eye-opener. It was like that light bulb went off in my head. Did you have a similar experience?
Well, I have actually had several similar experiences. Really starting with, I went from being a stay-at-home mom of my two kids to working in a really fast-paced, career-driven environment. And that was really driven by my spouse at home, who had put a lot of pressure on me to make money. And then simultaneously didn't like the schedule that I had. I was working in hospitality for a big name entertainment resort. They trained me. I essentially learned to like yes sir, no sir, because that's how the hospitality world works. It became a drain on my schedule. I suffered a real fatigue that impacted all of my life. My kids were becoming teenagers, and I was falling asleep at the dinner table or at stop signs on the way home at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I had a primary care provider who was older and assured me I was just a busy mom trying to have it all. Direct quotes on that one from her.
I hate that phrase. I hate that phrase so much.
Gotta love it.
Trying to have it all.
As if there's
just,
any other point to life than having what makes you happy, right?
right. And she then a year later retired. I got a new primary care provider. I talked to her about the fatigue, and she said it sounds like classic sleep apnea. So I got a CPAP machine at 35 years old. I realized that it's something that a lot of people suffer from and don't realize it. Like if you snore or if your partner snores, they could have it. But also like they could have it if they don't snore and they do weird things at night, and it's worth getting checked out because I had completely underestimated how much sleep impacts my function.
Just like with the sleep apnea, I think that, you know, when I was reading your story, you were dismissed for a long time before finally getting an ADHD diagnosis. And a lot of these things that happened in your life, you were dismissed for years and years before somebody finally took you seriously. So tell me a little bit about like what that journey was like, what that made you feel like.
Yeah, I grew up in a really small town that came from early Puritan roots. Basically, there was our elementary school was a schoolhouse that had been remodeled, and there was on average 6 or 7 kids per class. Teachers knew how to get you to memorize multiplication tables, but if you couldn't memorize, I had a third grade teacher that made me cry in front of the class because she got so frustrated that I couldn't do times tables.
It's that one size fits all type of approach.
Yes. So it was really early on that I learned to kind of just hide what I couldn't do, and I figured it out on my own. I spent a lot of time alone as a child in my room because I didn't really have an emotionally safe home. I was in a step family that was essentially a bully to me. We, as a family, have now grown and connected. So I want to preface by saying I'm in a good place with them now, but it's because we've had all this connection and talking and communication because I've learned all these things about myself. But I just became a quiet child who just skated by, and I wasn't a disruptive child in class, so I always went to the next level. I was even rejected for being left-handed because I once asked a family member to teach me how to crochet,
What?
and and she just said, I just can't teach a left-handed person to crochet.
And now, I mean, I don't know much about crocheting, but it just seems like such a small thing to get to dismiss a child over who wants to like be involved with. And it's like you said, you're connecting now, but like that was an opportunity for a moment of connection. And I'm sure that that sort of rejection feeling happened to you a lot growing up.
Yes, yeah, I was essentially feeling that rejection a lot, and divorce makes a child feel that way, and then not understanding why I couldn't see my dad was another, you know misunderstanding. And obviously as a child you're going to feel rejected, and then having really overbearing step family, I just really learned to make myself very small, and seeing the females in my life prioritize sacrificing their own interests for their family was the example that was set. My grandparents were farmers. They were extremely poor, but they were never hungry. And that was kind of always the stress to me growing up when I needed something that was more like time or emotional support. It was like, well, you're never hungry. And while I appreciate that, I also feel like, okay, now it's my turn to elevate our family to be better. We're not hungry, so now we can address the more important things. And I think a
Yeah, I
lot of
feel
people
like
don't do that.
Yeah, I feel like it kind of ends at that first layer a lot of times, right? Each generation has that, well, we solved this problem, we have a place to live. Well, we solved this problem,
Yes.
we have food. And there's kind of layers and layers each generation that build upon it. And I feel like now getting to the, sort of millennial Gen X type of era where it's our turn to be parents, now it's time for us to say like, well, what's the layer of it that we're addressing, and sometimes it is those pressures, those emotional things, those gaps that you have in connection.
We were talking about that in an episode we were recording earlier today, that those physical things and those physical needs or those physical limitations are the ones that everybody feels for. You're hungry, you don't have a roof over your head. Like, yeah, those are all awful things, but those aren't the only things that we need as humans. And everybody likes to brush the less physical ones under the rug, and we pretend that they don't exist, or that needing emotional things makes you needy and overdramatic and unappreciative. But no, you have a need for, just like you have a need for food and water, you have to be physically fulfilled and mentally and emotionally fulfilled.
Totally. Absolutely agree with that. And it's like, you know, those early years of yours were shaped a lot by those traditional family roles and those pressures that you had. You know, what was it like when you started feeling cracks in that and started realizing, like, hey, this isn't the only thing that matters?
Yeah, I guess the first cracks were, being rejected for those small little things that I couldn't help.
Hmm.
And what I understand is that a lot of people in our community feel like they don't fit because they just can't do some of these things that everyone else can do. Um, but then I started to develop like other things that I'm talented in that I can do that other people just can't. Um, but it started really small with those little things. And then as I became a teenager, it became a lot more pressure and not being able to meet expectations. I went into high school and ended up with a 504 plan, which I now know is a really great tool to have, that can really provide a lot of help. But was it was talked about like a shame, and I was not involved in the 504 plan meetings. It was talked about something that I would grow out of. So when I went to college, because my mom went to college, so I was going to go to college.
Of course.
And my siblings were going to college. I had twin step siblings that were the same age as me, so same grade, same age, same high school. Um,
And oh my God, I can't imagine the amount of comparison happening there between
Oh
not only
God.
the two of them, but then them and you and all of that stuff.
yeah, and to be honest, to my older stepsister, my stepsister who was the same age as me, and myself all ended up going to the same college, and I flunked out.
Ah, I see.
So I didn't take the 504 plan to college with me. I should have,
Hmm.
but I didn't. I was assured that I was ready to go independent and learn. And I went so wrong. I just got so distracted and I didn't have the support that I needed. And my parents didn't know how to support me other than pressure. And it just didn't work. And I stopped working and I left school. I floated around with family. I felt like a failure. And then I met this guy who like offered me support, and that's how I met my husband. I felt like I had found my place. I was a stay-at-home mom. It was just enough function that I could handle that lifestyle. I really enjoyed it. I love cooking. I loved managing the family calendar. I became a kindergarten co-teacher so that I could work at the same building where my kids were. So I was involved with the school community. It was ideal. And then I had pressure from my spouse to pursue more money. And
Right.
that is really what broke me and made me realize that there were things about myself that were different, and that I needed to find out why, and that I needed to be able to forgive myself and educate the people that do love me so that I could get the support that I needed.
Yeah, and that's a shame a bit to me. It sounds like because there was a moment where you were starting, even if you weren't quite aware of it yet, but starting to realize what worked for you and what your strengths were and what was going well. And then it's that external pressure, looking at other priorities that pulled you away from that. And Cass, wasn't that what we were just talking about as far as like the five things, like doing something authentic for you, right?
Yeah, it It was a lot of years. I was with him for 19 years, married.
Oh my God.
Yeah, like it just finalized in January of this year. So it's super recent. But yeah, I have a 19-year-old son and a 17-year-old son. And we were devoted to that for a long time because we both came from really like rough, broken, divorced family situations, and we didn't want that for our kids, and we decided that family life was what we were going to pursue. And I thought I had a partner, and once I started contributing financially to the point where I was making more money than him, I wanted to have part financial involvement in managing the money, and that was a real problem. I think there was a real issue with him being able to share the financial burden after bearing it for so long, but also I think that there was an issue with the fact that I made more money and I wanted to have some say in where it went.
And at the same
And
time, he
it's
was the one that
go
wanted you
ahead.
to start making money, but only the way he wanted you to do it.
Yeah, like you can't
Correct.
you can't have it both ways. You know what I mean? It's like if you want me to contribute financially, then I need to have some level of control over it. And it's like if
Yeah.
my wife starts making more money than me, great. You keep doing what you're doing, honey bun. I'm going to retire. It's like I would be thrilled, but not everybody looks at it that way. It's and to an extent, you know what I mean, not to excuse anything that might have happened, but that is likely a result of his conditioning and his societal pressures and how he was raised. And whether it came from him initially or came from the generation previously, it sounds like one of you looked inside and did the work and said, what am I doing wrong? How can I fix this? What's the issue here? And the other one sort of dug into that same sort of generational burden that was dropped on him. And it's a good example of how we can handle things in a different way when we realize those cracks, as we mentioned before.
Yeah, yeah, it was something that like I began to feel like I was like waking up to how it could actually be, and that like we could be happier. And he seemed so unhappy, and a lot of my communication became about like sharing the things that were making him unhappy because I wanted to help relieve that. And I was really enjoying pursuing a career and making more money. I just, like
That makes you feel good.
I didn't want to have to ask to buy a dress,
You don't want
you
like the
know,
George
and
Jetson allowance, like
I
kind of a
didn't want to,
thing.
I didn't want to feel guilt or like beholden because I had purchased something or because I wanted to do something. And, I started to see signs like I made a lot of friends from Puerto Rico in my work, and I learned a lot about the culture and I got really interested because I have a real people passion. And I just find that culture fascinating and I wanted to go and was flat out told that he would never go. And I just, I, I was like, you don't know me at all. And it just really fractured everything. And then
Yeah.
as I got my diagnosis and attempted to educate him on the things that really frustrated him about me, that they were forgivable because I couldn't help them, and that medicine and therapy would help me, and that I was pursuing that, and it was all rejected.
Yeah.
So here I
Now,
am.
so was one of those things either Puerto Rico or the diagnosis, or was there something else? Was there a moment that you realized like I have to make a change? Was there like a definitive this isn't working, I have to do something different moment?
Yeah, we went to see the band that played at our wedding. And he was having a moment where he was nostalgic and reliving that moment of being in love. and I was hoping he wouldn't touch me that night.
Oh.
And
And that
I
takes a long time to
was,
get to that place, to put it out there.
it takes a long time, and I just felt like he so didn't know me and that our relationship was about sex, if I could say that on the
Of course,
podcast.
you can say whatever you want.
And then as I was medicated and in therapy and using my CPAP, and my brain was clear, and really deciding that I didn't want to hide anything about me anymore to anyone. I just shared, and I got a lot of feedback, and I realized that I would be okay on my own. And I
Yeah.
started saying that I needed a break from sex. And it was 3 days after I said I needed a break from sex that he was like, I think I'm gonna release you from your marital obligation. And I was like,
Did he
okay.
phrase it like that? Did he phrase it like
That's
that?
a direct quote.
Good fucking God.
Yeah. It's like, all right, if you needed any more evidence or proof of the fact of whatever it was about, there it
Yeah.
is,
He's
right there.
Yeah.
talking like he's your boss. Like
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
is
like this is your job, your obligation. And again, there is to a certain extent some of that that's taught at a young age for someone to be that way. But good God, at I'm sure he's a similar age. At 40 fucking years old, have you not had one moment of self-awareness to turn around and look at yourself and say, maybe I'm the problem, or what's up with me? Like, I feel like I can't stop thinking of all the fucking things I'm doing wrong at all times. And it baffles me to no end when somebody can spend 40 years of their life and not even once think about it, because it haunts me every minute of every fucking day. So like, I don't know. I'm having a visceral reaction to this because of like
oh God.
how it's literally 90% of my waking thoughts are what am I doing wrong and how can I do it better. And this guy spent his entire life, never once turned it around and said like, well, this obviously is your problem, so I think I'm going to release you from your marital obligations, because even though we've probably had sex every day for the past however many 19 years that we're married, I can't go 3 days without it.
And well, I don't necessarily think that it was about sex all the time with that. I think it was it was more about control.
Oh yeah.
And unfortunately, especially people who have mental illnesses or disorders that aren't diagnosed until later, whether these predatory partners know it or not, we're easy marks for them to avoid accountability.
Oh
Because
yeah.
if you are the one with the problem, whether you have a diagnosis or not, if you're the one who has these like glaring self-esteem issues, or I'm not making the money and now I'm making the money but now I'm not there for the kids, and et cetera, et cetera, they have an easy way of saying you're the problem, you're the problem, you're the problem. And then suddenly you fix these things that they say are problems, but they can't adapt to the fact that you are not the problem anymore.
Yeah.
They get so used to it being your fault in their head, they either don't, or they have an easy get out of jail free card to say, I don't have to work on myself, it's always been you.
Correct. And then once I started work on myself, it was like I was expecting him to kind of meet me at that work.
Yeah.
And that,
That is what you'd expect from a partner. That's why we call them partners, right? It's not, to put it
yeah.
in Cass's way, a boss employee situation, right? You're supposed to be equal partners in this.
Yeah, and like a physical relationship is so easy to manipulate because it's something that's so easy to use in a people pleasing situation. So, he's asserted that he felt manipulated, which, like,
Right.
okay, but no.
Right. So you're I don't necessarily want to say what happened in your relationship, but it sounds like a situation where your only response was to use the same tactics. And so if this is the one thing that it's your body, you're the one who controls the access to it, right? Nobody can take that away. So if you are the one who's finally now exercising some control over the one little piece of this you actually have control over, and it's a problem, then the issue was the control the whole time.
Exactly, exactly. And I realized as I'm getting my diagnosis and I'm going it through therapy that like I had given everything. I had given up everything for this family unit. And not once was I recognized for giving up everything and changing jobs and changing fields and, like changing diapers, like just I was never once recognized for it, and I was begging to be recognized for it, and not even recognized or praised, but like just forgiven for sometimes not having the energy to do the dishes, and
You
Yeah.
shouldn't even
and
need to.
and for having a passion in my life. I've always done theater. It's kind of been like my self therapy for a lot of years, since I was 15 and I discovered it. And I was it was always treated like it was the other man. There was always jealousy over my involvement in that. And my family was even did it with me. It was community theater. My kids were in the chorus and worked backstage with me. And like you talked about a script at the beginning of the episode, because like that's so appropriate for my life, because so much of it has felt scripted and like I needed to follow the script, and here I am like just rejecting all of that because I physically couldn't give anymore. I realized
Right.
I was having daily panic attacks. Daily. So I was having so many panic attacks that they were every day, that it was commonplace. And he went on a vacation and I had
To Puerto Rico? Sorry.
no,
Sorry. Sorry. I had to put a
no.
little comic relief in there.
No, he went on a vacation and I had 5 days free of panic attacks, and I said, "There's no matter what I want for the family unit, I'm killing myself, and
Yeah.
I have to save myself,
Yeah.
and
You need
I
to be
have to
there.
make the changes, and I have to insist on the changes, and if those changes can't be met, then I have to do it for myself, because just letting life happen, which I think is so easy, especially for like people with autism and ADHD who are inside their heads to like just let life happen. It happens so fucking fast. And it's like all of a sudden, all these people have made all these decisions, and I've just sort of said, okay, because like, okay. And then here I am. And so now at 41, I'm discovering how to like manage a budget and read a car insurance bill.
Right. And I mean, you did spend a lot of years molding yourself to fit those expectations. So, how would you describe the feeling now, rediscovering you and you being able to control the expectations?
I, so I once and have often described it as walking out of a fog into a beautiful, brightly lit meadow, and I can see everything clearly in front of me, because I just, I'm now like really clearly seeing myself and seeing what I want and what I need, and my own sexuality and my own, the way I want to have my household, and the fact that if I want to paint and I want to leave a project out for months, I can do that, because like there's nobody else that can do that, and the hard work that it takes is horrible, and
Ugh, it
like,
is.
but
Yeah.
it's so worth doing. And the growing up in that traditional role, where like a partnership is the end all be all, it's not.
Right.
Have
Right.
you
I mean,
Are you familiar with the crane wife myth?
Maybe, I don't know.
I
I haven't
think
heard of it.
I think it's Japanese. And I might get a couple of details wrong, but in a nutshell, there is this, I think he's like a farmer and he finds this like injured crane and saves it. And shortly afterward, there's this beautiful woman who appears and they fall in love and they get married and it's all beautiful, yay. And she starts weaving these beautiful silk tapestries that end up making the family a ton of money. And she tells him, I will keep doing this, but you need to promise me to never come into the room where I make the tapestries. You can never see how I make them. And he says, okay. But his curiosity gets the better of him. And he comes in and he sees that the woman he married is actually a transformation of the crane that he saved. And the way she'd been making these tapestries was she had been yanking the feathers out of her own body and abusing her own body to save him and the family because she felt obligated because he saved her. And it is
That's really powerful.
it is obviously
Wow.
very applicable for women in general, but it's applicable for anybody, I think, that feels kind of shackled by these pressures.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think ultimately the what I'm gathering as the point of that story is that you can't destroy yourself even if it's going to help someone else, even if it's going to take care of your family. And you do obviously have responsibilities, but you can't keep that in all on yourself and put all of this tremendous pressure on you to be the one to solve it when it's going to destroy you in the
Mhm.
long run. Are you really helping the situation if you find yourself with nothing left to give after a certain amount of time?
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it was. It eventually I gave in to burnout and like did that for about a year. And that it felt like rock bottom. It was literal, it was emotional rock bottom. I've written about it a little bit, and I don't know how else to describe it other than rock bottom.
Yeah.
But
And
like
I can hear the emotion in
it's
your voice when you talk about it.
it's so cliche, but it's cliche for a reason because we're all human and we all go through those things, and there's so much we all just have in common with that. But like the only thing I could do is start again. Like, what else am I gonna do?
Right, right. So that kind of brings us to now. So,
Yeah.
give us an idea of where you're at now, kind of a snapshot, what's life looking like? Where are you heading? How have you kind of shifted your mindset now?
So now I'm really prioritizing my household, I guess I could say. And being the head of household, I'm really proud of that. And my younger son has the same diagnosis as me. And then he has his own diagnoses that he's working with. And essentially, like, he needs a life that is different and not according to plan. And thank goodness that I am where I'm at because I can give that to him. I can give him the space that he needs, and I just pulled him out of school actually, and enrolled him, and giving him a break. As recommended by therapists and doctors, to relieve burnout. And you know, I didn't get that at 17 and I probably needed it. And here I am able to give that to him. And if I don't want to cook, I don't feel like cooking, I don't cook. And
Right,
there's
right.
no pressure. I
My
live
God.
guilt free in my house. I come home and I don't feel bad about anything in my life. I'm doing theater again after I left theater in 2019 after stage managing 25 full productions.
Oh my God.
Haven't. I'm now assistant stage managing a local community theater production. I'm really, really, really excited to get backstage again. And I'm writing a book about my experiences going through burnout. And I have a Facebook group where I just like emotionally spew things sort of in real time, unapologetically, because it's my fucking group.
Yeah.
But
That's awesome.
I also invite my members to do the same.
Right.
And I'm writing a play, and I have a relationship with a partner who like completely understands how I want my dynamic to be, and just like lifts me up and supports that, and is just super kind to my kids and everything. So I'm
That's
just
so great. And it's like,
getting
I have
well.
to point out, like, yeah, I have to point out, like, first of all, we don't always put enough value on having that autonomy. And we don't always realize how big of a deal it is to be able to make decisions for yourself, as simple as, I don't feel like cooking, so we're getting takeout. Like, that's a really big deal to a lot of people. And I wanted to point out that it's so clear to see on your face and hear in your voice the difference when you're talking about where you were and how you felt then, and where you're talking about how you feel now and where you're at now. And you pick yourself up a little bit more. I can see your face light up. I can hear the tone of your voice be different, because this is what's fulfilling you, and this is what is of your choosing. You have the autonomy. And I don't think people understand all the time, unless they've been through it, that pressure and that feeling of having to give up your autonomy there. And it's got to feel really great to have that back. And I want I want to know a little bit more, because you mentioned it, writing your book, having your Facebook community. How has being able to tell that story helped that healing progress? Because it obviously is. I can see it in your face.
Yeah. I've always been a writer and hyper lexical, I guess, from a very, very early age, like that, like gifted child age. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, and then we all burn out at 16. So
and
thanks.
I
Yeah,
haven't,
what a
I
gift.
haven't,
What a
ha-
gift that is.
haven't picked up a book in 4 years, but whatever. But I love to write. I'm driven to it. And when I'm in a rock bottom emotional place, I get feeling like nobody wants to hear it. Like my mom will listen, but she doesn't want to hear me be sad when I'm sad all the time. And when you're going through burnout and your mind is racing and it's, 4 a.m. and everybody's heard it a million times. So I started feeling like if I just put it out to the universe, and I make it a group that people join they have to ask me to join. So they have to want to be there. And I just basically put it out there that I'm here to put out whatever's on my mind. It's going to be ADHD themed. It's going to be me themed. It's going to be whatever's happening in real time that I need to get out, that I just have to get out. So I'll write these check-ins in my group when I'm feeling like a certain type of way that I got to get something out, so everybody knows that a post that started with checking in, or hey guys, checking in, just checking in, anything that's a check-in, that's me writing when I'm in an emotional rut. I don't get in the rock bottom place anymore, but I get in the ruts that feel really low, and I still get feeling like I have to write. And what I've ended up doing is, in compiling all my documentation to get divorced, I realized that I have fodder for a book. So I'm taking all of the posts that I wrote in my group from the birth of the group, and I'm expanding each of those check-ins into chapters. I'm about 7 chapters in. I'm now working a full-time job, so I'm finding it hard to have energy to write, but I am still kind of plugging away. And it's been really healing for me. It's just kind of like I don't care who reads it because it's for me. And to go back and rewrite chapters and read where I was and now be where I'm at has been really healing and revealing for me. And I think it's really valuable for people to see where they grow because it's really easy to be in a place where you're low and feel like this is rock bottom again. I can't take it. But if you can look back, it's really good for you.
Yeah.
So that's been what I'm trying to do as far as my writing goes.
That's great. I think the best art, and obviously I consider writing art as well, but the best art is not created for the audience. It's created for the author or the person creating the art, the artist. And I think that art, I oftentimes say that there's no such thing as good art or bad art because it's not something that's meant to be judged. It's something that's meant to be an expression of you and your feelings, your process. And Cass, I know you understand that as well,
Oh
especially
yeah.
as a performer and artist. So, basically what I'm getting at here is that like I think that writing these things based off those experiences and expanding on that is a really great way of just processing that information too. And then there will be people who relate, and on the subject of people who relate, I'm sure there are a lot of people out here who feel like that. And I'm wondering what one piece of advice or what the one key takeaway you would say to someone who feels trapped in a life that they feel like doesn't fit them. What would you say is the one most important thing?
I would say the most important thing is if you have that little voice, any voice inside you saying that you could be happier, then you could be happier.
Short and sweet. I really like that. I don't think people acknowledge that voice or any of the voices.
Sometimes the voices are mean, but sometimes they're telling you I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to hear that no one in this house is happy. But
Yeah.
once I started acknowledging that not we're all unhappy, but we could be happier,
Yeah.
that's when that's the place to go.
Yeah.
Happier, kinder.
Cass is always saying it starts with a hard conversation with yourself, basically.
Yeah,
You have to
we
look
talked
inward,
about that
right?
a lot in the
Yeah.
last episode we recorded, actually.
Yeah,
And
for
I
sure.
think happier is a really good starting goal because sometimes happy seems so far away that it's like an insurmountable goal. But when you just say, I want to be happier than I am now, you break it into that manageable, like, how do I get happier than I am today? And then happier and happier and happier until all of a sudden, whoa, I'm happy.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
open ended. You can make
Yeah.
progress on that every day. It's not just like I'm sure as soon as the divorce papers came in and were finalized, you weren't immediately a different person. You know what I mean? It's not like a light switch flipped and all of a sudden you didn't have any problems. It's little by little.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is. And just follow that little by little happier. And sometimes happier today looks different than happier 2 years from now. But again, that growth is so fucking worth it. Like, just do it.
It is. Very much is. So where can people follow your journey, connect with your work, join your group? We'll have you send us your links so we can put them in the description. But if
Okay.
you want to tell people where they can find you,
So right now I have a private group. It has a frog logo. It's called It's ADHD, my dudes. So you can find me there. You can request to join. There's questions to join. Just say you heard me on Fuck the Plan, and I'll let you in. It is a private group because I do encourage bearing your soul. I have asked the group members if they were interested in going public. They were not. So as of right now, I'm keeping it private for everyone's security and comfort. But I would love to have new members who share and just follow or whatever. As I write my book, that's probably the first place that I'll publicize it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds great to me. Any final words of wisdom from either of you? I think that I'm going to let what Hillary said stand. I don't necessarily have any final closing thoughts myself. I don't think I could put it any better.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, you and I have a lot in common.
Without you
I,
even realizing.
yeah, no, the whole time I was tearing up over some of the stuff you were saying. Um, I was in a relationship that very much resembled your old marriage, and I know exactly how that feels, and I know exactly how it feels to finally be free of it and to be overwhelmed and excited and invigorated by the new freedom. And theater is tied for the love of my life with my fiance and my dog and Danny DeVito. So, like, I completely understand the therapeutic nature of that and how important it is to find somebody who gets that. And it is just such a beautiful, powerful thing to see somebody who was in that situation finally understand how beautiful and powerful they are as an individual. And I think that you are going to inspire so many people, and you are going to bring so much comfort to so many people. And I am so proud of the journey you've been making, and I hope you are damn fucking proud of that too, because you deserve to be. Thank you so much for sharing everything you've shared, because it has done a lot for me just to sit here and listen to it, and I can't even imagine the impact it's going to have on the listeners. So, thank you, genuinely.
Thank you
I
so much. I
I think
really
we're gonna have
appreciate
real
that.
we're gonna have real tears from all three of us for the
Yeah.
first time in the podcast history. No, this is really great, and a lot of times it's hard for me to imagine and put myself in the shoes of that, because the elephant in the room. I'm a dude, and you guys are not, and I have not been in that type of relationship. However, I have certainly a lot of empathy for what you've been going through, and I can certainly understand how those feelings might relate.